My name is Maya Chen, and I'm 24 years old. 6 years back, I stood on the porch of our house in Portland, Maine, watching raindrops splash against the steps. My mom and dad looked at me with angry faces. "Leave now and don't ever think about coming home," they told me. Their words hurt more than any cut or bruise. I was 18 and I loved someone they said was wrong for me. That rainy night, I grabbed my backpack and walked into the storm. My sneakers got soaked. My heart felt broken. They thought I would give up and come crawling back. But I never did. That night was like starting a whole new life. The rain pushed me forward, making everything harder. Their mean words were only the beginning of my troubles. I faced lies, sadness, and moments when I almost gave up during that terrible storm. But something inside me kept fighting. 6 years later, my parents really wished they could take back what they said. Stay watching to find out how I turned their rejection into my power and how they ended up regretting pushing me away. If your family ever hurt you like this, write a comment and tell everyone your story. Click subscribe to follow along with me on this adventure. Growing up in Portland, Maine, I always felt like I wasn't as good as my brother Lucas. My parents, Margaret Chen and Robert Chen, ran our home like everything had to be perfect. Mom, with her strict rules and long lists of things I needed to do, wanted me to go to a fancy college and marry someone rich. Maybe a business owner or a doctor. Dad agreed with everything she said, nodding his head quietly. They dreamed of having a daughter they could brag about to neighbors and friends at parties. But that daughter wasn't me. I was Maya, the kid who never fit their picture. My brother Lucas was everything they wanted. He was 28, worked as an engineer at a big company, and had a girlfriend my parents absolutely loved. "Lucas knows what he's doing with his life," Mom would say with a big smile while I sat there feeling invisible. Lucas got good grades, won awards, and made them so proud. Everything he did was perfect in their eyes. Every time I brought home a good test score, Mom would say, "Lucas always did better than this." I would sit there quietly, wishing I could just disappear. Dad would add, "You need to try harder, Maya," like I wasn't already doing my best. Their words made me feel empty inside, like I would never be good enough no matter what I did. When I was in high school, I started sneaking away from home. I'd go to coffee shops, bookstores, and parks where I could just be myself without anyone judging me. That's when I met Alex Martinez. He was 23 and worked as a cook at a small restaurant downtown. Alex had messy hair and a warm smile that made me feel safe. He loved cooking and dreamed of opening his own restaurant someday. He wasn't the kind of person my parents imagined for me. No fancy degree, no suit and tie, but Alex made me feel like I mattered. We'd meet at the park near the harbor, sharing our hopes and dreams. When I was with Alex, I didn't feel like Lucas's disappointing little sister. I was just me. When I told Mom about Alex, her face went hard like stone. "A cook," she said, her voice sharp and cold. "You deserve someone much better than that." Dad didn't say much, but I could see disappointment all over his face. They started dragging me to dinners with Lucas and his girlfriend, pointing out how successful they were and telling me I should want that too. I tried explaining that Alex had big plans and worked really hard, but Mom interrupted me. "He's not good enough for you," she snapped, her eyes like ice. My face got hot and I wanted to yell back, but nothing I said would change their minds. They saw Alex as a mistake, someone pulling me away from their perfect plan for my life. Lucas tried to help sometimes, but it never made much difference. "They're just worried about you," he'd tell me when we were alone. But Lucas had spent years making them happy, and I knew he didn't want to risk losing their approval. I felt completely alone, stuck between what my parents wanted and what my heart told me was right. Alex became my escape. We'd meet after I finished my shift at a bookstore where I worked, talking until late at night about running away and building a life without all their rules. I started staying out longer, ignoring Mom's angry phone calls and Dad's disappointed looks. The more time I spent with Alex, the less I wanted to be home. But things kept getting worse. One night I heard Mom and Dad whispering in the kitchen. "She's ruining everything," Mom said, her voice tight with anger. "That boy is nothing but trouble." Dad mumbled something about needing to be stricter with me. I stood in the hallway, my stomach twisting in knots, feeling like a stranger in my own house. They didn't trust me or care about what made me happy. They only saw me as someone who was letting them down. By the time I turned 18, I was done trying to make them proud. I wanted to build my own life with Alex, far away from their constant criticism. I didn't know how soon everything would explode and change my life forever. Being with Alex was the first time I chose to live for myself instead of trying to please everyone else. But my family refused to accept it. By 18, I was exhausted from fighting to be someone I wasn't. Alex, with his kind eyes and dreams of running a restaurant, felt like my way out of that suffocating house. I started spending nights at his tiny apartment above the restaurant. It was small, with creaky floors and old furniture, but it felt like freedom. I'd pack a bag, tell Mom I was staying at a friend's house, and sneak over to be with him. Every time I left, I could feel her anger through the angry texts I ignored. Dad's silence felt just as heavy, like a weight pressing down on me. Lucas knew something was going on. "You're making a huge mistake, Maya," he warned me one morning when he caught me coming home at sunrise. My hair was messy and my clothes wrinkled from sleeping at Alex's place. I shrugged off his warning, tired of his half-hearted advice. He wouldn't stand up to Mom and Dad, so why should I listen to him? I was done hiding who I was and what I wanted. One weekend I made my choice. I stuffed my backpack with clothes, my favorite books, and some photos, and told Alex I was moving in for good. His face lit up with happiness, and for a moment, I believed we could actually make it work away from my family's control. But secrets don't stay hidden in Portland. Someone who knew my mom, a lady from her gym, saw me carrying bags into Alex's apartment. That same evening, everything fell apart. The air in our house felt thick and heavy when I got home for dinner. Mom stood at the sink, her hands shaking as she washed dishes. "You're living with that cook," she said, her voice cutting like broken glass. I froze, my fork stopping halfway to my mouth. Dad sat across from me, his face angry, no longer the gentle father who used to read me bedtime stories. "Maya, tell us this isn't true," he said quietly, but his voice was full of anger. I nodded slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. There was no point in lying anymore. The argument exploded right there at the dinner table. Mom's voice got louder and louder. "You're throwing away your whole future. He's nobody, Maya. Nobody." I fought back, my voice shaking. "He's more than you think. You don't even know him." Dad slammed his fist on the table, making all the plates jump. "Enough," he shouted. "You're embarrassing this family." I stared at him, feeling hurt slice through my chest. Embarrassing them. That's all they cared about. Not my happiness, just how things looked to other people. Lucas sat there quietly, staring at his plate like it was the most interesting thing in the world. He didn't say a word to help me. I felt trapped, like everyone was against me in the place that was supposed to be my home. It was getting late, and rain had started pouring down outside, drumming against the windows like angry fingers. The fight got worse and worse until finally it broke. Mom pointed at the front door, her face twisted with rage. "If you pick him over us, you're dead to us. Don't ever come back here again," she said, her words cold as ice. Dad stood behind her, his jaw tight, saying nothing to stop her. I waited for him to speak up, to tell her she was going too far, but he just stood there silently. My chest hurt like someone was squeezing my heart. "Fine," I said, my voice barely working. "I don't need you either." I grabbed my backpack, still packed from earlier, and rushed to my room for my jacket. Lucas followed me, whispering, "Maya, just say you're sorry. They'll calm down eventually." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "They don't want me, Lucas. They want someone I'll never be." He reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I couldn't stay there. Not after those terrible words. I walked out the front door into the pouring rain. It hit my face like tiny needles, soaking through my jacket in seconds. I stood on the porch for a moment, looking back at the house with its warm yellow lights glowing in the windows. Felt like those lights were laughing at me. The loneliness crashed over me like a wave, heavier than the storm itself. I turned away and started walking, my backpack bouncing on my shoulder, heading toward Alex's apartment. I had no idea what would happen next, only that I couldn't go back. Moving in with Alex, I thought everything would finally be okay, but I was wrong. After leaving my parents' house, I settled into Alex's small apartment. It was cramped, with a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in and a kitchen the size of a closet, but it was ours. I felt lighter, free from Mom and Dad's constant judging. Alex would come home smelling like garlic and spices, his smile making me forget about that awful rainy night. We'd cook simple meals together, laugh when we burned the rice, and talk about a future where he'd run his own restaurant and I'd help him. For the first time in forever, I thought I could build a life that was actually mine. To pay bills, I got a job at a grocery store, putting cans on shelves and helping customers find things. The money wasn't great, but I saved every penny I could, dreaming of getting a nicer place for us someday. Alex worked super long hours at the restaurant, sometimes not coming home until really late. "I'm doing this for us," he'd say, kissing my cheek before heading out the door. I believed him and trusted that we were building something good together. My brother Lucas texted me once, asking if I was doing okay. "I'm fine," I texted back quickly, not wanting to talk more. I didn't need his pity or Mom's lectures. I had Alex, and I thought that was enough. About 3 months later, things started feeling weird. Alex began staying out even later than before and was always on his phone. At first, I told myself he was just stressed about work. But then I got a strange message on Instagram from someone I didn't know. "Your boyfriend isn't who you think he is," it said, with just enough details about where Alex had been to make my stomach feel sick. I stared at my phone screen, my hands shaking. Who sent this? Someone jealous? A nosy neighbor? Had no idea. But doubt started growing inside me like a weed, spreading and choking out my trust. I started noticing little things I'd been ignoring before. Alex would go outside to answer phone calls, his voice so quiet I couldn't hear what he was saying. He'd leave his wallet on the counter, and once I found a receipt from a coffee shop we'd never been to together, dated on a night he said he was working late. My mind raced, putting together all these small clues like puzzle pieces. His quick excuses, the way he wouldn't look at me when I asked about his day. I felt sick to my stomach, like the floor was disappearing under my feet. I'd given up everything for him, my family, my home, and now this? I needed to know the truth, but part of me was terrified of what I'd find out. One evening I couldn't take it anymore. Alex came home late, his hair messy, and I could smell perfume on his shirt. Not his cooking smells, but something flowery and different. I stood in our tiny kitchen, arms crossed, trying to keep my voice steady even though I was shaking inside. "Where were you really tonight?" he asked. His eyes went wide with surprise, but then he laughed like it was no big deal. "Just hanging with some friends from work," he said, grabbing a soda from the fridge. I pushed harder, telling him about the message, the receipt, all the late-night phone calls. His face changed, getting hard and defensive. "You're being crazy, Maya. I'm not doing anything wrong," he said. But his words felt empty, like he was reading from a script. His defensiveness told me everything I needed to know without him actually admitting it. I didn't scream or cry like I thought I would. Something inside me just clicked, quiet but strong. "I'm done," I said, my voice low but firm. Alex stared at me, his mouth opening to argue, but I cut him off. "I trusted you. I gave up everything for you." He reached out to touch my arm, mumbling excuses and apologies, but I stepped back away from him. I couldn't stay in that apartment anymore, surrounded by all the broken dreams of the life I thought we'd have together. I grabbed my backpack, the same one I'd carried out of my parents' house, and threw my clothes inside. Alex called after me, his voice getting quieter and quieter as I walked toward the door. "Maya, wait. Let me explain." But I didn't wait. I opened the door and walked out into the night. The street was quiet and empty, the cold air hitting my face. I had nowhere to go, no plan, just the heavy weight of betrayal pressing down on my shoulders. I'd lost my family, and now I'd lost Alex too. I was completely alone again, standing on an empty sidewalk with nowhere to call home. That winter in Portland was the coldest I'd ever experienced, and not just because of the weather. After walking out on Alex, I was by myself with my backpack on my shoulder. The betrayal felt heavier than all my belongings combined. I had no home, no family, no plan for what to do next. The streets were covered in ice, wind howling through the buildings as snow piled up everywhere. I needed to find somewhere to stay, somewhere I could figure out my next move, but the money I'd saved from the grocery store was almost gone. I walked through the storm, my breath making little clouds in the freezing air, trying to remember where there was a cheap hotel downtown. Each step felt harder than the last, the cold seeping through my jacket and into my bones. My mind was racing with scary questions. Where would I sleep? How would I eat? What was I going to do? The hotel was much farther than I remembered. By the time I reached the train station on Harbor Street, the storm had gotten so bad I could barely see 2 feet in front of me. The station was small and dim, with flickering lights and empty benches except for a few other people stuck in the storm. My fingers were so numb I could barely feel them. I dropped onto a bench, the weak heater barely making any difference against the brutal cold outside. I counted the money left in my pocket, only enough to rent a cheap hotel room for maybe 2 nights after buying food and a train ticket. My options were running out fast, and panic grabbed hold of me, sharp and mean. I'd left my parents' house, walked away from Alex, and now I was stuck in a train station with nowhere to go and almost no money. Desperate and freezing, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called my parents' number. The screen glowed weakly in the dark station. Maybe they'd softened up by now. Maybe they'd let me come home just for one night to get warm and figure things out. Mom answered, her voice sharp and unfriendly. "What do you want, Maya?" I swallowed hard, my throat feeling tight. "Mom, I'm stuck. The storm is really bad. Can I please come home just for tonight?" She didn't even let me finish. "Don't come back here. You made your choice when you left." Her words were exactly like that rainy night when they kicked me out, each word cutting into me like a knife. I tried calling Dad next, hoping maybe he'd be kinder and understand. "Maya, you heard your mother," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Don't call us again." The phone call ended and I stared at the dark screen, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my entire life. The storm kept raging outside, snow piling up against the station's glass doors like it was trying to bury the whole building. I sank back onto the hard bench, my bag at my feet, crushed by their rejection all over again. I'd lost Alex, lost my family, lost everything that mattered. The other people in the station avoided looking at me, too caught up in their own problems to care about mine. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, trying to hold myself together, but the loneliness was suffocating. I felt like I was drowning in it. I don't know how long I sat there. It could have been minutes or hours. Time felt weird and stretched out. The storm's roar drowned out my thoughts, and I started wondering if I'd freeze if I tried to walk to the hotel in this weather. I was right on the edge of giving up completely when a voice broke through my dark thoughts. "You okay, kid?" I looked up and saw a woman in a train conductor's uniform. Her name tag said Sandra Bell. She was maybe in her 50s, with gray hair and kind, worried eyes. I shook my head, unable to make my voice work to answer. She looked at the storm raging outside, then back at me sitting there shivering. "You can't stay here all night. Station closes in an hour." I managed to whisper something about not having anywhere else to go, my voice so quiet I wasn't sure she heard me. Sandra didn't ask a bunch of questions or make me explain everything. Instead, she grabbed her keys from her pocket. "Come on," she said firmly. "My shift just ended. I'll take you somewhere safe and warm." I hesitated, unsure if I should trust a stranger, but her calm, steady way of talking made me feel like maybe it would be okay. I followed her to her car parked just outside, the engine still warm from her drive to work. The snow was brutal and unforgiving, but Sandra drove carefully through the empty streets, taking me to a small shelter on the edge of town. They've got beds here and it's warm, she said, looking at me with concerned eyes. Get yourself inside and rest. You look like you've been through a war. She paused and added, sometimes life knocks us down hard but we get back up. You will too. I thanked her, my voice cracking with emotion, and stepped out into the freezing night. The shelter's sign glowed faintly through the falling snow. Sandra's car pulled away slowly, and I stood there for a moment, feeling the tiniest flicker of hope cutting through the cold and darkness. After that terrible night in the blizzard, I knew I had to start completely over and rely only on myself. The shelter Sandra took me to was a lifeline, but it wasn't a real home. I had maybe $200 left from my grocery store job, barely enough to survive for a week. I needed a real plan, a way to stand on my own 2 feet after losing my family and Alex. The weight of those betrayals stayed with me like a shadow, but I couldn't let it drag me down. I had to keep moving forward, prove to myself that I could survive without any of them. I reached out to my best friend from high school, Emma Brooks. Emma was working at a vet clinic, barely making enough money herself, but she'd always been there for me. I sent her a text from my dying phone, my fingers still cold and stiff. Maya, where are you? I've been worried sick. She texted back immediately. I told her everything. My parents kicking me out, Alex cheating, the storm, being stuck at the train station. She didn't waste a second. Come stay with me, she texted. We'll figure this out together. The next day, I was at her apartment, a tiny place with mismatched furniture she'd gotten from yard sales. Emma handed me hot chocolate and some cash, maybe $150. It's not a lot, but take it, she said. I tried to say no, that I couldn't take her money, but she wouldn't listen. You're not doing this alone, okay? She said, her eyes fierce and determined. With Emma's help, I found a studio apartment on the outskirts of Portland. It was tiny and run down, with paint peeling off the walls and a bathroom sink that dripped constantly. But it was mine. The rent ate up almost all my savings, so I kept working at the grocery store, taking every extra shift they'd give me. The work was exhausting. Long hours on my feet, dealing with rude customers who treated me like I was invisible, but it kept food on my table and a roof over my head. Emma came by all the time, bringing cheap takeout or dragging me to a diner when I looked too worn out to function. You're stronger than you think, Maya, she'd tell me, her smile pulling me back from the edge when doubt crept in. Her belief in me was like a tiny light in the darkness, something to hold on to when I felt like giving up. I wanted more than just barely surviving day to day. I'd always been good at art and drawing, so I enrolled in evening graphic design classes at the community college. The classes were tough, trying to balance work and school, but they gave me something to hope for. I'd stay in the library after class ended, working on design projects and imagining a future where I didn't have to worry about every penny I spent. The teacher, a patient woman who really knew her stuff, noticed how hard I was trying. You've got real talent, Maya, she said one evening, handing back my assignment with an A grade and a rare smile. Those words stuck with me like glue, reminding me that I could be more than my parents' disappointment or Alex's leftover. Then Lucas reached out to me. First, he sent a letter to my new apartment, his handwriting neat and careful on the envelope. I'm sorry for everything that happened, he wrote, his words thoughtful and sincere. He'd put $100 inside, saying it was from his own savings, not from Mom or Dad. You don't need them, Maya. You're tougher than any of us knew. A week later, my phone buzzed with his number. I want to help, he said, his voice soft and apologetic. No strings attached, I promise. I thanked him but kept my guard way up. I wasn't ready to trust family again, not after everything Mom and Dad had said to me. Their words still echoed in my head every single day. I used Lucas's money for groceries and art supplies, but I didn't answer most of his texts. I needed space and time to build something that was completely mine, with no one else's help or judgment. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I'd wake up early, work my shift at the store, go to class, and collapse into bed exhausted but driven by something deeper than tiredness. Emma was my rock through everything, cheering me on whenever I doubted myself or wanted to quit. One night, sitting in her apartment eating cheap pizza, she raised her glass of lemonade. "To you, Maya," she said with a huge grin. "Look at everything you're doing." I smiled back, a real genuine smile for the first time in what felt like forever. I wasn't completely healed yet. The scars from my parents' rejection and Alex's betrayal ran deep, like cracks in a broken plate. But I was moving forward one step at a time. My apartment, my job, my classes, they were small victories, but they were mine. They were proof that I could rebuild my life without leaning on anyone who'd hurt me. I didn't know what the future held, but I was learning to trust myself, one difficult step at a time. 6 years later, I looked back at how far I'd traveled without needing any of them. I wasn't the broken girl who'd walked out of Alex's apartment or sat freezing in that train station anymore. I'd built a life piece by piece, and I could actually be proud of it. After finishing my graphic design program, I landed a job at a creative agency in Portland, designing logos and websites for all kinds of clients. My desk was by a window overlooking the city, a view that reminded me every single day of what I'd overcome and how far I'd come. I lived in a nice apartment now with Jordan Hayes, a photographer I'd met at an art gallery opening. Jordan was gentle and supportive, his laugh like medicine for old wounds. We'd cook dinner together on weekends, plan camping trips, and talk about dreams that actually felt possible now. For the first time in my life, I felt truly secure. Not just surviving day to day, but actually thriving and happy. My parents, Margaret and Robert, didn't do so well. Lucas texted me one spring, his message careful but urgent. "Mom and Dad want to see you," he wrote. "They say they're sorry for everything." I stared at my phone screen, the words stirring up a confusing mix of anger and indifference. Sorry. After they'd thrown me out into a storm and told me never to come back. I remembered Mom's ice-cold voice and Dad's flat refusal to help me that freezing night. Lucas sent me an actual letter next, explaining how Mom and Dad kept asking about me, saying they missed me and regretted what they'd done. I didn't reply to either message. When Lucas finally called me, I kept it really short. "They made their choice, Lucas," I said, my voice firm and clear. "They don't get to just undo it because they feel bad now." I'd spent 6 years rebuilding my life without them, and I wasn't about to let their guilt drag me backward. They'd lost their daughter for good, left with nothing but regret and an empty house that echoed with their mistakes. Alex's life fell apart too, though I only heard about it through Emma. His dream of opening a restaurant had completely collapsed. He'd borrowed money from everyone he knew, but the business failed within 8 months. Bad choices, terrible planning, worse luck. He was alone now, living in a rundown apartment even smaller than the one we'd shared. No family around, no real friends to help him out. Emma told me he'd asked about me once, his voice heavy with regret and sadness, but I'd blocked his number years ago. He couldn't reach me, and I wanted to keep it that way. His betrayal had cut deep and left scars, but it also pushed me to become strong and independent. While I moved forward and built something beautiful, Alex was stuck in the past, haunted by everything he'd thrown away. His regret was his problem to deal with, not mine to fix or worry about. Looking back now, that stormy rainy night changed me forever in ways I couldn't have imagined. But I don't regret walking away from them, not for a single second. I'd been a girl desperate for approval, clinging to a family who constantly judged me and a boyfriend who lied straight to my face. Leaving all of them was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my entire life, but it also set me free. Every single step I took after that, stocking shelves at the grocery store, studying late into the night, barely scraping by in that tiny crumbling apartment, built the strong woman I am today. I learned to value myself instead of begging for validation from people who would never see my worth. Mom and Dad's rejection, Alex's cheating and lies. They were incredibly painful at the time, but they taught me something crucial. I didn't need any of them to be happy or successful. I had Jordan, Emma, and most importantly, my own strength and determination. My life became living proof that choosing yourself is always worth it, no matter how much it costs in the short term. The biggest lesson I carry with me every day is this: protect your worth like it's precious treasure. Don't beg for love from people who can't or won't give it to you. My parents chose their pride over their own daughter, and now they live with silence and regret. Alex chose quick thrills and lies, and he ended up with nothing and nobody. I chose myself, and I built a life I genuinely love waking up to every morning. Independence wasn't easy or simple. It meant countless long nights, empty bank accounts, and moments of crushing doubt when I thought I'd never make it. But it was infinitely better than clinging to a toxic family or a faithless partner who didn't value me. Walking away took more courage than I knew I had, but it gave me strength I didn't know existed inside me. To anyone watching this and listening to my story, know this deep in your heart. You don't need to hold on to people who hurt you or make you feel small. Build your own path, even if it feels lonely and scary at first. It's worth every difficult step. Thank you so much for staying with my story all the way to the end. It means everything to share this journey with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? What lessons have you learned from walking away or standing up for yourself? Share them with me and with others watching. Your voice matters just as much as mine did when I chose to start over and build a new life.